joining us. Welcome. This is Demystifying Jurying. We're all about offering this guide for professional artists and putting your best show application forward. I did suggest as you were all entering that you open up the chat. And please feel free to introduce yourselves. And just as importantly, please put any questions in there as we go along. We will be looking to the chat stream for questions, so please use that feature. We've got everybody muted, and so it'll be important that you use the chat because we're not going to be able to obviously hear you if you speak up with a question. One other thing that I wanted to let you all know at the end of this, we've set up a really, I promise, really quick survey that should pop up at the conclusion of the meeting. So I'm crossing my fingers that happens. And if so, we'd love to have your feedback. All right, well, let's get started. My name is Sharon Strine. I am the chair of the board of directors of the Rittenhouse Square Fine Arts Association, which means I get to head up a crazy talented team of board members that produce the Rittenhouse shows, along with our amazing show director. And so with me tonight are two awesome individuals, Chris Buonomo, said amazing show director, and Sarah Pollock, my trusty co-pilot and our vice chair of the board. I see you guys waving. There's Chris and Sarah. Chris and Sarah and I, as well as every member of the board of directors, they're all practicing professional artists. So we know the rodeo, and we all come to this conversation with a lot of understanding, and we are here to help. I'm going to begin to share a screen of our presentation. We're at the end of it. Okay. Let's see. I see Chris. Thumbs up if we're
Sharon, I see the share screen.
Cool. It's working. Great. Thank you. All right. Well, we know that many people in this presentation are already familiar with the Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show, but some of you may have just found us through some Facebook group discussion about jurying and applying to shows. So let me just briefly talk about our show first. The Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show in Philadelphia is recognized as one of the best shows in the country. It's almost a century old. This is the show's 87th year in existence. Chris has a favorite expression that's catching on. He likes to say we're a unicorn. There are some special things about our show that makes us unique. First, it is a show of only original fine art. There are no crafts or reproductions, no pottery or photography or jewelry or apparel. It is strictly original fine art. And that translates into a patronage of buyers who come for fine art and know the value of it. So our artists really benefit from that. In addition, as I mentioned, the show is produced by the board of directors of our nonprofit organization, and we are all fellow exhibiting artists. So we know what's important to artists and art patrons, and we work year-round to constantly innovate and improve and ensure success for all of our artists. We do all sorts of great things for the show. We promote like crazy, from social media to billboards to signage and news coverage, to mentoring young art students and giving them an opportunity to share their work in the center of the park. We invite other community arts organizations to appear in the park on our show weekends. And we welcome our artists at the start of the show with Philadelphia soft pretzels. So the show has always been in the same location. It's a beautiful park in Center City, Philly. It is surrounded by luxury apartments and homes and fabulous restaurants. There are just 145 available artist spaces around the perimeter of the park. And we receive about 3 times more applications than we have space for. So that is why we are all here. We want to help you have your best chance of being invited to the show. So we're going to give you a behind the scenes review of what the jurying process looks like from the back end, and we're going to offer our best advice as we go along. I should say that what we'll cover will help you put your best application in for every show you hope to participate in, not just the Rittenhouse show. We're going to chat for a little bit and then make time for some Q&A if we haven't answered all your questions. We may not be able to get to every individual question, but we'll do our best to get to the questions that might be most relevant for the most people. And as the questions come in, we'll start to identify trends and speak to the ones that seem to be coming up for a lot of people. This session is being recorded and will appear eventually on the Rittenhouse YouTube channel. So you can always go back and consider that as a resource. For questions as we go, please use the chat box. We'll keep an eye on it. And again, make sure to select send to everyone. All right, our first, the applications for our show are made through zapplication.org, which is pretty much the standard for most of the shows around the country. We're going to assume that most of you are familiar with Zapplication, ZAP for short. If not, go to that website, tool around, do a search for the Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show, and you'll find lots of helpful information. Any questions, feel free to reach out to us. But we're going to assume that there's some familiarity, and we'll begin with all of the applications having been submitted. So each application is reviewed and scored by a panel of 6 jurors. Ours is a blind jury process. In the application that you submit to Zapplication, you provide your name and your address, your website address, social media accounts if you have them, 4 images of your best artwork, and your booth shot. The jurors do not see all of that. They do not see any of your identification. So your application is judged strictly by the quality of the work that they see. We recently did a real deep dive into our jurying process, and the outcome of that was the development of some very clear standards and guidelines for our jurors, and more specifics on what makes an ideal guest juror, so that we have a jury pool with expert and experienced judgment. As I mentioned, we get about 3 times as many applications as there are available spaces at the show, and the volume of applications is steadily increasing every year. The Rittenhouse show has become a national one. It is not just a regional one. So it's competitive, but we assemble a different jury for every show, which means that if you apply once and don't get in, it will be a different assembled juror for the next show and the next. So we encourage people to apply and apply. Our jurors look closely at every application and so we figure 5 images times approximately 400 applications. They're reviewing 2,000 images, as well as the notes that your application provides. We give our jurors, as I mentioned, real clear guidance, and we recommend that they go through all of the images before they begin scoring, and then again to carefully consider every application as they assign a score and provide comments if they choose to do so. They're given 2 weeks to do this work. It's a lot of work. And we are really grateful for the art professionals that serve as our jurors. Each application is scored 1 to 10, 10 being the highest score. This final states that our show does not jury by category. What that means is there's no cap for the number of sculptors or painters, or if some shows do it that way. It is for us strictly the quality of the work at the booth shop. So, an important point, and we're going to stress this further on as well, your booth shop is super important, counts for up to 20% of your score. It is to see 4 beautiful images of artwork and then a poor booth shot. That can be the difference between being invited and not. If you consider, 2 artists with really strong art portfolios, one with an excellent booth presentation and one with any number of these violations. Your name cannot be visible in the booth shot. Some artists will submit a booth shot and be standing in their booth or maybe holding a ribbon. You cannot identify yourself in your application. And that's taken very seriously. So any number of those violations will affect your score. Can't stress how important that part of your submission is. And further into that.
But she said booth shop makes the difference.
20% of the score.
I want to be sure that we're all muted, folks.
Yeah, Sharon, you might want to go through and just do another bulk mute. One other thing too is like if you can put maybe your AirPods back in, because sometimes your audio is a little bit garbled.
Well, I will try that again and hope we don't get that.
Yeah, understandable.
Okay, how we doing?
That is better.
Cool. All right. Very good. I don't know if I just skipped that one. Yes. After all the scoring's complete, our show director reviews all the results, organizes all the applications from highest to lowest. There's often a group of identical scores around the cutoff point of 145. When we have ties, these applications are re-juried and then ranked within that segment. And then the highest scoring artists are extended an invitation. There's a wait list created. If an invited artist declines our invitation, their space goes to the first artist on the wait list. Any questions? Anybody? Sarah, are you watching the chat? Any questions that we need to answer at this point?
One question from Len asking whether the type of tent, like if it's a pop-up versus like a dome, does that affect the scoring?
Good question. And we're going to be getting into more details about the tent. I would say it is more about what's in the tent. We prefer we recommend a certain type of tent, the dome tent, as opposed to an easy up, but it is not required. So more about that later.
And then one specific question more about sculpture, but I think we can maybe hold off on that until the end, just to kind of talk more about our categories at the end.
Okay, yeah, hang on to that one. I want to be sure that we cover it.
Hey, Sarah, let me just answer that real quick.
Sure.
Just because it's super easy. That can be applied in either category. It doesn't matter. You can apply if you feel comfortable in sculpture, or you can apply in mixed media with assemblage. So, especially since we don't jury by category, it's not as stringent. Whether it's mixed media or sculpture, it honestly depends on just if it makes the score to get into the show. So you can apply either way.
Great, thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though our jurors review every application, your images need to stand out among thousands. So this is what the juror sees. It is a row of all of your images. there are the 4 individual pieces of artwork and a booth shot. As they advance through your application, they can see individual images. So this is the format. It is a square, which means that if your work is wide and skinny or tall and skinny, this is what the juror sees. That's not to suggest that you should change the dimensions of your work. The jurors can and do zoom in. Just sharing this for an awareness. This is what is seen. And so the square format works well for an application like this. It's bright, colorful, full frame. You want to be sure that your submitted artwork images reflect your current body of work. Our jurors will notice if there are 4 images of artwork in an application, yet none of them are in the booth shot. Jurors will also notice if the same images are resubmitted each year. Your work is evolving, and so your application should reflect that with fresh images and a current booth shot. This is a biggie. There should be consistency and coherence in your application of work. I think as artists, sometimes we can be too close to our own work. Sometimes, especially in the beginning of a career, we want to show as much as we can. You know, I can paint landscapes, I can paint people, I can paint abstracts, but that can be very confusing. If you can imagine being a juror, an application that has an identifiable consistency of style and a cohesive flow and a professional appearance is going to be viewed with a more favorable perspective than a confusing one. It can be helpful to show your application images to a friend with a good eye and get some feedback. There are Facebook groups that where artists will share their work and get advice. And actually, with that in mind, sharing your images with an artist friend, you can also trade skills with a friend in this process. If you know someone who knows how to photograph artwork, ask them if they'll take images of your work for you, and maybe you're a better writer and you can trade writing or editing for them. Use your network, bring people into your process, use professional photographers. It's super important to have really good images. So an example of a cohesive body of work. This is a consistency of style, technique. It's very clear that all of these images came from one artist, and they are all high quality shots. This is our previous show director, by the way. This is Steve Oliver's work. And this, she's such a good sport. This is our previous chair, Sandy Sedmak-Engel. This is not reflective of her current work. She put this together to show what you don't want to do. So no reflection on Sandy. She's an amazing, talented artist. And so, here's an example of, I can do people, I can do abstracts, I can do figure drawing, I can do loose illustrations. The first look that we had of what the jurors see, that strip of 4 plus the booth shot, that was also Sandy's work, and that was a collection of these pieces belong together. So this is an example of inconsistent work. Your images need to be presented in the best possible way. Photos of your images should be clean and in focus. The lighting should be even. You want to crop out everything that isn't your artwork. If you're doing 3D pieces, keep the backgrounds simple to showcase your work. Make sure exposures are consistent. And back to the point of photography, consider having your work professionally photographed. Important stuff. Any questions? How are we doing? Okay, good. And some more visuals to illustrate the point. Here's a couple of examples of photos. The one on the right is much sharper. It is clean. It is in focus. The one on the left is, I mean, it's a very nice piece of artwork. The one on the right is a much better example of the work, and it can stand up to zooming in on it and really getting a feel of the technique. More examples of lighting, the importance of lighting. That bottom strip is an example of consistency of exposure and lighting. You want to be sure that images are not distorted. If it's square, it should be square. These little things, they mean a lot. An example of lighting for a 3D piece. Boy, the difference between the two. On the left, you're seeing shadows, you're seeing glare. On the right, you see a really fine image that compels you to look closer. There are lots of apps that allow us to put our artwork in a lovely setting, which is a nifty thing to do for promotions and to share with patrons. And it's a helpful tool. It does not belong in your application. So we do not want to submit your artwork in situ. And you also don't want to include the frame. A patron, would respond to that and go, "Ooh, that is perfect for my home. I love that frame." But a juror needs to see this, needs to really be able to look at the quality of the artwork and the technique. It is not about the room where it's hung or the frame around the piece. It is all about the quality of the artwork.
Sharon, we do have a couple of questions.
Yeah, good.
So kind of themed on the same concept of why is it so important to have consistency among the images, or for that matter, in the booth? Like, why is that prized?
When you think of maybe the artists that you are most influenced by, you think of a recognizable style. When you think of maybe a brand new art student's artwork, it's all over the place, necessarily so. You're experimenting, you're trying everything. But when you mean to show your work as a professional artist and represent, this is my style, this is my medium, this is my body of work, it is best to have an identifiable, unique style that is only yours, where a juror and a patron, for that matter, will see it and go, this speaks to me. This artist, this body of work, this style, and if you represent too many different things, it gets confusing for all. Does that answer the question? Do anyone, Sarah, Chris, either one of you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we can always argue about how people sometimes have had, many famous artists have had different styles, but for the show, like, we just have a very brief opportunity to interact with your work and to get a sense of, how you would present your work. And that's all we can do is, look at the basis of consistency. It certainly doesn't mean that you can't change styles over time. We had another question about whether it would be helpful to work in a series, and certainly that can be a helpful way for artists to kind of get a more cohesive voice if they work in a series. But again, we're happy to see evolution, and in fact, having images that are new and fresh and current is also very important, because it does become noticeable if like the same images get submitted year after year after year. We'd like to see things that are current and representative of where you're at right now.
Right. Great.
Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and one of the things that's getting lost in this discussion about consistency is it's also about the consistency, not in the work in your booth for the show. A lot of, you have to realize you're the jury, they're looking at your work fairly quickly at first before they delve into it. Having a consistency in sizing is more visually pleasing to a juror. It's easier for them to instantly see the work. Like when we talked about the horizontals, the verticals, sizing actually matters. It's that initial impression. It makes a lot to the juror. They then will go in and look at the work. But if the sizing is consistent between the images, it helps the juror kind of move through the pieces easier. There is something to being said about that. And the other thing is, again, for images, a good application shouldn't show everything you do. It's too scattershot. A good application should show 4 pieces that have a similar feel and a similar hand involved. So, and I know this personally through my years of applying, because I do more than one medium. And when I look at old applications where I was trying to focus on everything I do, it's a much weaker application than when I focused in on specific material or style. So that's really what we're talking about.
Good. Yeah. Thanks. I hope that answers that. So some more visuals, more examples. These are photographs of sculpture. You want to be sure that your work doesn't get lost in the background. It's all about your artwork. Big difference. Neutral background we were talking about. This is, it is, your attention is on the artwork. It is not the backyard or the trees in the background. Here we go again. My broken record booth image is super important, and the booth image conveys to the jury professionalism, quality, and again, back to the cohesiveness of the body of work. So promised we'd talk some specifics about the tents. These are dome tents. They are, as I say, preferred but not required. They are sturdy, and we do have occasional wind in the park. All of the tents need to be weighted. You'll see that in the information about the show. But these are the preferred tents. They can be, if you don't have one yet, that often comes up in questions to us about, what do I do? I don't have one yet, but I want to be part of the show. You can borrow them. You can buy them used. There are Facebook groups that offer, someone's either gotten a new tent or they've they're moving on to they're retiring from outdoor art shows, and you can pick up a tent for less money than buying new if that is a need. This is an easy up tent. They're much lighter weight. They are easier to damage, which means they're less protection for your work, and they're just not as sturdy in the wind. They again, all the tents need to be weighted, but if the easy up is used, it's a real concern. They must be heavily weighted. We want to be sure that all of the tents are white, no colored awning, no color, no pattern. That would be distracting. They all need to be white. Now some examples. So there are a number of things in this image that keep us from being able to give the artwork proper consideration. First, we're seeing we're seeing distractions all around. There are buildings in the background. There's neighboring tents. There's a pole in the foreground. There's a table inside the booth with some clutter on it. It looks like they took care in hanging and aligning their work, but the first impression is not the best that it could be. This is our previous director again, Steve Oliver. This is neat. It's kind of a cornucopia of sizes and frames, and we see some of the backyard. His more recent booth shots are more consistent and better reflect his very strong style. In comparison, this has a very clean, uncluttered appearance and gives a strong statement of this artist's work and style, as does this. Coming up, here's a series of shots from Chris's evolution. No secrets, no shame here. Chris is a sculptor who works with wood and marble. It is hard to appreciate his work in this earlier booth image. You see other tents. You see you see through it. The lighting isn't the best. This next one, he's upped his game. He's swapped in some black pedestals. The lighting still isn't the very best, and boy, that fencing in the background and the armature of the tent, they really fight for your attention. Voila, so much better, right? I mean, that there's just the comparison between the earliest one and now this. You see every piece clearly. It looks super professional, really clean, really clear. Well done, Chris.
No, and we talked to a lot of people. It takes time to develop your booth.
Yeah,
It
right.
doesn't happen overnight. And you saw I started with an easy up myself, and
Right.
it's a process, and you learn. And every to this day, every show I do, I take a booth shot, because maybe that will
Yes.
be my best booth shot. So
Right.
before I put
Right.
any signage up, I get my booth done, and then I take the shot, and sometimes it's a great shot and sometimes not, but
Right.
you're always looking to improve your booth shot. And
Yes.
nobody has a brilliant booth shot from the get-go. It takes some time to develop.
Yeah. Super good advice. Good points. The angle of the shot is something I take note of too. I mean, just finding the best angle to show as much of the work as possible, and to get the lighting just the way you want it. So here you go. Like, imagine you're a juror, or a patron, or a show director for that matter. Imagine 145 art spaces. The booths that have a strong and clean and clear appearance are likely to be the most compelling and successful. So that was a lot about booths. Questions come up?
Hey, Sharon, let me add one thing real quick before any
Sure.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
The booth shot also, you don't have to have as few pieces during the show as you might have in your booth shot. The booth shot, you really want it really clean. Less is more. It doesn't mean you can only have 4 or 5 pieces in your booth at the show. You still want to maintain a similar look, but the booth shot it's like getting dolled up to go out. You want to look really good for that one shot, and then your show will be similar, but it's never as pristine a lot of times as the booth shot. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, it could be, we're looking at these shots and going, well, I hope to sell more than, the 6 paintings that are in that booth shot. And that is not meant to represent, all you would bring to the show. Obviously you would have more work available, and perhaps have a different layout of the work to show more of what you brought. But for the booth shot, clean and clear, and the less clutter, the better.
A couple of questions about whether retouching of the booth image is allowed, like photoshopping, that kind of thing.
Right. I think from my experience and from what I hear from other artists, it is quite normal to take a look at your booth shot and go, I didn't realize there was a stain on that panel. Like things that that will kind of brighten the overall appearance. You certainly don't want to do anything to the artwork that that would make it no longer faithful to the art. We see sometimes Photoshop work that looks kind of klutzy. You can see that there's a piece that was kind of pasted in, placed in the booth, and it doesn't look like it belongs there, or it's not true to size. It needs to be faithful to the work. If you brighten it up, no problem with that. But to create, and this goes to the virtual booths. If you create a booth that is often obvious to jurors, and that could affect your score.
Yeah, Sharon, the booths, and I get a lot of comments from the jurors that ask me about the booths that have obviously had the grounds, the floor of the booth has been completely added in after the fact. And even when they're really well done, quite often it's a noticeable change that's been done. And
Right.
the jurors do notice that, and they do ask about it. So
Yeah.
I always say, again, less is more. There's obviously, you can do a little bit of touch up. If you want to remove a name, obviously that's a really smart thing to do.
Good point.
Once you get too far along, it becomes a little bit artificial looking, and you kind of go over the top a little too much sometimes.
Yeah, kind of cast doubt on the
Yeah.
the legitimacy of the work.
Yep.
Any other questions?
We do have a couple of extra questions, but I think it might be good to hold on till the end.
Okay, great. So we want to recommend that you take the time to really review your application in Zap. You can preview your images, and if you see underneath application preview right there, that preview as juror, you click on that and you will see what the jurors see. You'll see that, that strip of 5, before you submit, have a look at that. Double check all of your information, double check the spelling of your website. We'll grab that information and use that, because we want to promote all of our artists. If there's an improper spelling, then that site's not going to work. So, the link to your site won't work. So, just double check all of the information that you enter, and read all of the show information. We try to anticipate every question, and we provide lots of information. So most likely you'll find the answers that you need. Okay, once more with feeling, a recap of stuff that's really important. The cropping of the images, the quality of the images, the cohesiveness of the body of work. You want to eliminate any booth issues that distract from your artwork. You do not include any ineligible categories. By that, there's a couple meanings to that. If you do wood sculpture, for example, you cannot also include a wooden bowl, a wooden box, a wooden cutting board. Anything that is functional work is not fine art, and so that would disqualify your submission. Chris kind of touched on this as well, I think, mentioning that he does more than one medium. If you want to be considered for more than one medium, you need to actually prepare 2 different applications. And if you are accepted, if you do both, say, painting and sculpture, you may be accepted in one and not the other. If you're accepted in both, then you would be able to exhibit them together, but your applications must be separate. Do make sure there's no identifying information. Your body or your name should not be anywhere in your images or in your application information. And you want to take a shot of your booth from the very best angle. Play with that. Take it, set it up, take as many shots as you need, and find the very best presentation. Super important. If after listening to all of this, you want to, if you have already submitted your application for the September show and you want to make any changes, we can make that happen for you. We can switch your status from received to incomplete. Just reach out to Chris, send an email. That info at goes to Chris, and he will make that one-time change so that you can get back in there and improve your application if you like. The deadline to submit an application for the September show is March 11th. That's Monday. So you've got some time to work on your application and submit by Monday at midnight.
Hey, Sharon, can I add something in real quick before we move on?
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the things I see quite a bit, and it's an easy thing to rectify for artists. Some artists, for their booth shot, they put their name, Chris Buonomo's booth shot. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because even though you're not in the image, but a surprising amount of artists do that.
It'll show up as a title. Yeah.
And it shows up with the booth shot as the title of
Right.
that. So don't do that. And the other thing is, it's kind of frowned upon to put which show the booth shot was at. So some people, they'll want to show that they did a good show, so they'll be like Armonk booth shot or a Coconut Grove booth shot. Don't do that either. Just booth shot. No name, no anything other than it just saying booth shot. Okay.
Right. Yeah, good points. And I think a lot of that is just, it's you have these images, you name them so that you can find them, and then you select it and upload it. But it's really important to just consider absolutely everything that will give you your best chance and your best application. And these are all tips that make a difference. So I'm gonna stop screen sharing so we can look at one another again and entertain any other questions. Or Sarah, Chris,
Yes.
I invite you to add anything else.
There are a couple of questions
Great.
specifically dealing with scoring. So some curiosity that if the booth is 20%, then what's the other 80%? And then kind of as a tag along to that from Linda, asking if we have certain structure of points that we would deduct for things that would be marked down for. So just kind of asking for more specifics on what causes.
Really good questions. The 20% comes from, there are 5 images. And so, it is the booth shot is as important as the other 4 images. I mentioned that we gave our jurors some very clear guidelines on how to approach scoring. And so there were recommended points that could be subtracted from a perfect score for any number of violations. So yeah, there's we try to give the jurors as much guidance as possible so that the numbers are consistent.
So to answer a question there, as far as I've been around the show, there's never been a perfect score that I know of. So nobody's gotten a perfect score, and I'm disappointed in that because I've deserved it many times, I think. But
Not yet.
I can't stress enough how important the booth shot is. It is 20%, but ultimately, psychologically, maybe it's a bit more. And why I say that is a show like Rittenhouse, we have we don't get any poor applications. We're a high tier show, and almost every application we get is somebody who is worthy of being in the show. And quite often the scoring is so incredibly close on the work that it is the booth shot that makes the difference. It is, there are so many good artists that submit 4 really strong images, and that booth shot, when it can be really disappointing when you see work and you see 4 great images and then you look at the booth and you kind of go, ooh. And it's really important, so don't overlook it. And what we've noticed is, um a lot of the younger artists tend to be a little more computer savvy with the booth shot, and they develop that shot quick, where some artists that have been around a little bit longer maybe aren't as quick to get into the updating the booth shot. And as these shows, not just our show, all the top shows, as they get more and more and more competitive, that booth shot becomes more and more and more important. So don't overlook it. It's even if you have to set one up in your yard. And a couple of the things that Sharon touched on, don't take a booth shot from far away. You don't need to see anything around the booth. You don't want to see, do a very close, nice, tight. You don't even need to see the top of the dome. Just get a really nice, close in there image of, and in your mind, think you want it to be, it's a 10-foot by 10-foot gallery that you're creating. Think of it like that.
Say. It's your gallery. Yeah.
You are making a gallery space, and you want to present it like it's a gallery. So these are little things that become really, really important, and clean, really clean, nothing on the ground. I see artists that they have paintings that they'll angle like leaning against something that's on the ground, and you don't want anything like that. It kind of starts to give it more of a crafty flea market vibe. You want everything hung nicely. And listen, sculpture can be difficult. It's really hard to shoot sculpture nicely. It's hard to take a booth, and just kind of keep redoing it and keep practicing over and over until you get the proper shots. And it is worth investing a little money to have somebody come and take some professional shots as well.
Right.
So,
Couple of questions about the written portion of the application, like do we actually read the artist statement, and how important is that? Can we be fluffy and esoteric or not? So just kind of asking, like, how much is the writing portion a factor?
I think I know I read them, and I can tell from the jurors' comments that they are read. I think they are supportive. I think it's a good thing to give some insight into your process. I don't think that anyone's looking for philosophy. It is more tell us kind of what is unique about your work, and whether that has to do with your technique or your inspiration. It's meant to be a very brief pitch, and I wouldn't sweat it. It is, it's your work, and it is mostly your work that speaks for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful if you want to use those written portions of your application to support like more of your process or your inspiration. They are read, and they can be a factor in helping to understand your materials, your technique, and that can be a factor then in your score overall. So definitely, be attentive to that and try to explain as clearly as you can. I always like to use the example of, like, if you were sharing this with a child, like a grade school child, maybe like just explain, as clearly as you can. And that's a great way to communicate and help support the imagery.
Yeah, good. Just don't put your name in.
Yeah, and you don't have to, yeah, you don't have to give your artistic philosophy. Tools, techniques.
Yeah.
That's, that's so I'm looking 300 characters it should be enough to just give an overlay of how you make what you make. That's most
Right.
important.
Right. And actually, if you went any longer than that, it's less likely to be read.
Yeah.
So, concise. Just what you need to say. What else we
So
got?
Kelly's got a question. Kelly, I'm happy to answer this for you. No, the booth shot, if you had your booth shot, you'd say you want a full back wall, but then at the show you have a partial that you can walk behind. That's totally fine. That's nothing that would ever be. The tent setup can be slightly different for the show than you do for your booth shot. That's not a problem even at all. So
Good
you
question.
just, listen, if you have a little table, a little pro panel desk that you have and you have in your booth during the show, absolutely, I wouldn't put it in my booth shot. So those are things that are absolutely fine to change between a booth shot and your actual show setup.
What else we got?
Question about whether we give any feedback for people who aren't accepted. Like, can they get more detailed guidance on how to improve in the future?
Oh boy, we have perhaps someday, Zach will provide some way of making that easy. We have gone further, I think, than many by looking at the submissions, looking at the jurors' comments, and providing in a message that goes out to the artists who are not invited. Like, these are the things that we found were most important in our successful submissions. It's not individual feedback, but it's like, pay attention to these things and try again. So that, in addition, I would say we, all of us, reach out to individual artists. Like you get to know some of the artists who are kind of trying and trying again, or even artists who have been successfully exhibiting, and we'll see like, boy, they barely got in this year. Their booth shot needs work, and we will reach out and help, but it's impossible to do with 400 applicants, but we really try to give the most feedback that we feel would be the most helpful to as many as we can.
That's good. Answering a question, I'm saying, Tanya, Sarah did respond about the wait list, but I will say that because we don't jury by category, we don't wait list by category. We have a general wait list. So you don't need somebody from a sculptor or a painter. We grab the next artist that on the scoring wait list, and I contact them. So it depends on the show. It can move. It can move up until the week of the show where somebody might drop out the last week and I call somebody off the wait list. So being on the wait list does not mean that you're not coming, because we do legitimately call off the wait list. So don't ever worry about anything like that.
Anything else?
One final question that I just briefly responded to from Julia, asking, does the booth shot have to have 3 sides?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would say doesn't have to. And I don't know if that would be, because they maybe don't have a tent yet and they're setting it up in, with 2 walls. I would say, a note of explanation might be a good idea to accompany that. But I think, you want to try to show that interior of your gallery, and try to show those 3 walls. that's ideal. But your application would not be rejected if you weren't able to do that.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, if you're a 2D artist, like I'm a painter, and so I try to maximize like being able to show on those 3 walls, like maximize the amount of real estate that allows me to share the current body of work. Sometimes, like we've seen with sculptors and people who work in more 3-dimensional or mixed media, like they can take advantage of a different angle, but you want to kind of think about it as like giving a fairly straight on level perspective of your work and not have it be too akimbo or too strangely distorted in perspective. Like, want to try to avoid a fisheye effect or things like that kind of distort the work. Try to be faithfully representative of what you're doing so that the juror doesn't have to sit there and furrow his brow and wonder, well, what is this?
Yeah, but as a sculptor, I at times have used a little bit more of a skewed booth shot, and that's totally fine because sometimes for sculpture that's a better angle. A couple more I'm seeing real here. Don't worry about your social media following. It's not important. We asked for social media just so we can promote each artist. That's why we're looking for social media from you guys. We can help promote you guys.
Yes,
And
it certainly does not hurt you if you don't have that.
No, Beth, having a booth, a rug in the booth shot is a distraction. No, as long as it's not a heavy pattern, something distracting, something nice and kind of neutral. I think they look nice myself. I like booths that have the rugs in them, but not. And then the wall materials, Sarah wrote that as well. You don't want. It doesn't matter what it is, but so for instance, when I started using panels, my panels were a light beige, and I realized it did not work well with my woodwork. My pieces were getting lost. So I actually had to, I spent a lot of time figuring a way to recolor my panels to make them a dark charcoal and just for my work, which worked a lot. So again, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's clean and it adds support. Because the one thing is, as much as we want these booths to look really great, they have to act great as well. And not just our show, but other shows where, you need 50 pounds of weight on each leg. You need them to be stable and supportive. And city shows can get windy, whether it's here or Chicago or anywhere. So those are things you want to take into account that, you have a lot of time and money invested in your work. You want to make sure it stays safe as well. So that's as equally important as how the booth looks. And Kelly, yes, Kelly, let me know. Send me an email, and I will put your booth back into incomplete, and you can make whatever changes you want.
Yes, good point. Anyone who needs to take another look at their images or swap in a different booth shot, email Chris. Use that info@RittenhouseSquareArt.com, and he will give you the opportunity to do that. It needs to be done before March 11, though, because that's the deadline.
Yeah, and then someone who's not understanding the judging, 20% booth shot, and then each image scored. So basically, consider there's five images being looked at. Each one's 20%. So just look at it like that, and that's where you get 20% for the booth. So that's the easiest way to, So in theoretically, each image is going to get scored 1 through 10 by itself, and then it's an overall score of 1 through 10 for the entire application. So that's how that works.
Great. How are we doing, folks? Any other questions? Good job. We are just 1 hour. I want to thank. Sarah, Mike, am I good to go?
I think so.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I think so.
So just want to thank everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hope it's been helpful. We're going to put this recording on the Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show YouTube channel, so it'll be there for you. Also appreciate it if you would fill out a very, very quick survey that's going to pop up when we all end the meeting and leave. Apologize for our technical issues as we started. I don't know where that came from. We'll figure that one out. Just fill out the survey, tell us what you thought of the session, anything else that you'd like to see us cover in the future. And lastly, and most importantly, get your application in for the September show by March 11. Thanks again, everyone. We wish you the best of luck, and hope to see you in Rittenhouse Square in September. Good night, all.
And if anybody really has any questions, email me. I'm happy to help you. I always, I'm happy to answer any questions. So if you get stuck on something, just send something to info or give me a call and I'll walk you through it. Thanks, everybody. Hey, Sharon, stay on a minute.
You bet.
All right.
Someone just asked, what's the YouTube channel? If they're still there, it is the on YouTube, Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show. Just search it, you'll find it.
We lost Sarah real quick. Okay, that's all right.
All right.
Hold on. All right.
We can stop recording.